Snow fell heavy across Frosthaven, burying rooftops and muffling sound until the city seemed half asleep beneath its white shroud. Yet inside the High Council chamber, there was no peace. Voices clashed louder than any storm, their echoes rattling against stone and timber alike. Lord Dareth's fist struck the table, rattling goblets. "We are blind if we think this Kaelor can be fought by steel alone. His shadow spreads faster than winter. Even our grain rots in storage, as though cursed. Tell me that is the work of mortal hands." Across from him, Lady Eris sneered. Her jewels glittered like ice against the firelight. "You cower at phantoms, Dareth. Every crop fails in hard winters. Every lord loses men to hunger. But now you see a sorcerer behind every shadow, because it is convenient to blame him instead of your own failings." Rohan listened in silence, standing at the head of the long table. His hand rested unconsciously against his chest, where the shard's chill never left him. He could feel it stir now, faint but restless, as if aware it was the true subject of their quarrel. "They fight like children while the city starves," Aelin muttered at his side. Her eyes flicked to him. "End this, Rohan. Speak." He drew breath, steadying himself. "Kaelor's hand is on this valley, whether we admit it or not. I have faced his power, felt it seep into my veins. If we quarrel amongst ourselves, we hand him victory before the first blade is drawn." The chamber quieted, though uneasily. Some lords would not meet his gaze. Others stared too long, as if weighing whether their loyalty was to him, or to their own fear. It was Lord Brannock, the grizzled veteran, who finally leaned forward. "Then what would you have us do, my lord? Muster what remains of our men and march into the snow, to fight shadows? Or sit behind these walls until famine kills us faster than Kaelor's sorcery?" The words cut deeper than he knew. Because Rohan had no answer, at least, none that would not brand him as cursed. He thought of the battlefield, of raiders turned to brittle statues by his hand. Of the black ice that leapt unbidden when his blood was hot with battle. He had not told them the whole of it. If he confessed, would they call him savior or monster? Before he could speak, the doors slammed wide. Gildred strode in, boots clotted with snow, his breath fogging the air. A bundle hung in his hand, wrapped in torn cloth and dripping red onto the floor. "My lords," he said, his voice grim, "you can argue later. Look what we pulled from the river." He cast the bundle onto the table. The cloth unraveled, and a severed head rolled free. Gasps and curses filled the chamber. The dead man's eyes were wide, mouth frozen in a rictus of terror. His hair was matted with frost, but his face was unmistakable. Lord Brenner, one of their own council. Missing these past 3 days. "Gods preserve us," whispered Eris. "What devilry is this?" Gildred's jaw was tight. "Not devilry. Treachery. We found him weighted with chains, yet his throat cut before he was thrown. And these?" He lifted the torn cloth, revealing the crest stitched into it. A sigil, blackened but clear. The raven of House Morwen, a southern house sworn to neutrality. Aelin's eyes narrowed. A message. Rohan's pulse hammered. He saw the lords' faces twist, fear becoming suspicion, suspicion hardening into blame. Already they whispered. If southern blades had reached Frosthaven's heart, who had opened the gates? Who had betrayed their oath? The shard pulsed cold against his chest, its whisper curling in his mind. Trust none. Strike first, or be struck down. He closed his fist over it, shuddering. Already, Frosthaven trembled not from Kaelor's sorcery, but from the treachery of men. And as the council chamber filled with cries for vengeance, Rohan understood. The enemy was no longer only outside their walls. It was seated at his very table. The council chamber did not dissolve into silence. It broke into factions. House Morwen. Lady Eris spat, slamming her hand on the table. They swore their neutrality, and now they send assassins into our midst? They think us weak, divided, ripe for the plucking. If we do not march south, we invite more of this. Lord Dareth's eyes blazed. Fool, if we turn our blades on the south, Kaelor's armies will sweep the north unopposed. That is exactly what he desires, to set us clawing at one another while he tightens his grip. You sound as though you know his mind, Dareth, muttered one of the minor lords. Perhaps you already bend the knee to him. That single remark spread like wildfire. Half a dozen voices rose, each accusing, each defending. The severed head still sat on the table, its dead eyes staring, silent witness to the collapse of order. Rohan's voice cut through. Enough. But though the room stilled, it was not in obedience. It was wariness. The Lord's eyes were on him now, and in them he saw it. The unease that had been building for months, since whispers of his strange power first took root. He speaks for Frosthaven, Aelin said, stepping forward, her tone sharp as steel. Do not forget who it was that broke Kaelor's raiders at Blackfrost Pass. You still breathe because of him. But her defense only deepened the divide. Eris' lips curved in a thin smile. Yes, because of him, and what he wields. Tell me, Rohan, when you turned men to ice with a glance, was that truly Kaelor's sorcery or your own? Perhaps you are the shadow at our table. Gasps rippled around the chamber. Even Brannick's weathered face tightened. Rohan's throat was dry, but he met her gaze. I have bled for this city. I have buried men I called brothers. Do not mistake survival for treachery. Yet the shard throbbed cold, as though mocking his words. They will never trust you. Not while it beats inside you. Before the quarrel could ignite into something worse, Gildred interjected. Enough prattle. While you argue, Kaelor's agents bleed us. The question is not who will command, but who can be trusted to act. Silence followed. No one dared answer outright. Finally, Brannick leaned forward, his hands clenched. Then let us act. Quietly. If Morwen has turned, we must root out their spies in Frosthaven before another lord is slain. Give me men, and I will see it done. Eris tilted her head. And if it is not Morwen? If the treachery lies nearer? You would be hunting shadows while the true serpent coils at our feet. The chamber once more edged toward open fracture. Rohan spoke again, his voice calm but edged with command. You will not fracture Frosthaven while I still draw breath. Each of you swore oaths. Break them now, and you deliver the city into Kaelor's hands. And if it is you who has broken yours? Eris whispered. The words hung like a knife in the air. For a moment, Rohan thought one of the lords would draw steel then and there. Instead, Brannick stood abruptly. Enough. Words will not bind our wounds. Until we know who betrayed us, the council is finished. One by one, the lords pushed back their chairs and left, some with dark glares at Rohan, others with fear, still others with calculation. When the chamber was nearly empty, only Gildred, Aelin, and Eris remained. Eris lingered by the door, her smile like frost. Be careful, Rohan. A city divided devours itself from within. Sometimes, with a little push. She left, the echo of her heels fading into silence. Rohan exhaled slowly. Gildred's hand tightened on the hilt of his axe. She's testing you. Testing us all. And the lords are too eager for someone to blame. Aelin touched his arm. Then we must find the truth before the city tears itself apart. Rohan nodded, though the shards whisper nod at him still. The truth is a blade. Wield it, or be cut by it. And in that moment, he knew. The next betrayal was already in motion. The streets of Frosthaven whispered louder than the council chamber. Snow fell thick, muffling the world, yet every shadow seemed alive with listening ears. Rohan walked beside Gildred, the old warrior's axe strapped across his back, while Aelin kept pace, her cloak pulled tight against the bitter wind. Eyes follow us, she murmured. They always do now, Rohan replied. His breath clouded in the air. The lord's doubts spill into the alleys. Every word they speak seeps into the city, twisted and sharpened. Gildred's jaw worked like a grinding millstone. And assassins slip through like smoke. That one we caught last night bore Morwen's seal. But too neatly. No blade for hire worth his coin would carry such proof unless someone wished him found. Rohan frowned. A false trail. Aye. Someone wants Morwen blamed. Someone within Frosthaven. They turned into the old quarter, where houses leaned on one another like weary men. The door they sought bore no crest, only a subtle scratch in the wood, Gildred's mark, left for his informants. He knocked once, then twice, and the door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled of tallow and ink. A thin man with ink-stained fingers bowed low. My lord, Guildmaster, Lady Aelin, you should not be here. Nor should Frosthaven's secrets bleed out into enemy hands, Rohan said. The scribe's hands trembled as he spread a pile of parchment across the table. These came into the city 3 nights past, carried by couriers claiming southern allegiance. Rohan scanned the seal, a falcon over broken chains. Not Morwen, not any northern house. Who are they? The Valen Dominion, the scribe whispered. Merchants, soldiers, kingslayers. Their envoy hides in the city even now, whispering promises to your lords. Aelin stiffened. What promises? The man's eyes darted. Alliance, coin, ships, but always at a price. They say the Dominion will march against Kaelor if Frosthaven bends the knee and... He swallowed hard. And what? Rohan pressed. And if you, my lord, bind your line to theirs by marriage. The words struck like a hammer. Rohan stared at the seal again, its ink still smelling faintly of wax. The Dominion did not merely offer help, they sought to claim Frosthaven's destiny through him. Who among the council listens? Gildred demanded. The scribe hesitated. Eris, Dareth, and others I dare not name. Rohan's fist tightened until the parchment crumpled. They would sell Frosthaven to foreign chains rather than stand by me. Aelin's voice was sharp with fury. Or rather, they would trade you, Rohan, like coin on the table. Her eyes blazed, and he saw in them not only anger but fear. Fear that such a bargain might succeed. Where is this envoy now? Gildred asked. The scribe swallowed. At the Broken Crown Inn, under guard. But be wary, the Dominion's knives are sharper than Morwen's. They pay in blood as often as in gold. Rohan folded the parchment, tucking it into his cloak. Then we will meet him. Not as supplicants but as lords of Frosthaven. If the Dominion seeks to snare us, we must know the trap's shape. As they stepped back into the snow, the city's bells rang faintly in the distance, tolling the hour. Yet in the sound Rohan heard something darker, the knell of choice, of treachery closing in. Aelin walked close beside him. If they demand your hand for their alliance, what will you say? The question lingered. Rohan did not answer. The shard at his breast pulsed cold, whispering as if mocking him. Every chain begins with a vow. The Broken Crown Inn crouched at the edge of Frosthaven's old market, its windows glowing like watchful eyes in the snow. Music and laughter seeped from within, too loud, too careless, as though meant to disguise something darker. Rohan tightened his cloak and pushed through the door. Heat struck him first, the fire blazing in the hearth, the reek of spiced wine and sweat. Merchants, mercenaries, and sailors filled the hall, their laughter sharp as knives. Yet a space had been cleared at the center table, where a man in silvered mail sat alone, drinking as though he owned the place. The Dominion envoy. His hair was black as raven's wing, tied back with a golden clasp. A scar cut down his cheek like a blade's kiss, and his eyes gleamed with the cold patience of a predator. Two guards flanked him, tall, hard-eyed men with curved swords foreign to northern lands. Rohan stepped forward, Gildred looming at his side, Aelin close behind. Conversation faltered. The envoy rose with slow grace, inclining his head. Lord Rohan of Frosthaven, he said, his voice smooth as oiled steel. At last, the shard-bearer honors me with his presence. You know too much, Rohan replied. The envoy smiled faintly. The Dominion makes it their business to know what others whisper in fear. Sit, drink with me, let us speak as allies. Reluctantly, Rohan sat. Aelin remained standing, her hand on her dagger. The envoy poured wine, red as blood. The north crumbles. Kaelor tightens his fist. Your council squabbles like children. And you, young lord, are left with power no man trusts. Gildred's voice rumbled. Choose your words with care. But the envoy waved it away. Truth is never insult, old warrior. It is gift, and I come bearing more. The Dominion offers Frosthaven coin enough to pay 3 armies. Ships enough to command the sea. And soldiers who do not flinch before Shadow's pawn. And the price? Rohan asked coldly. The envoy's smile sharpened. The simplest bond in the world. A wedding. You to Lady Serenia of Valen, heir to the Dominion's throne. With such a union, the north and south become one, Kaelor's host broken before it gathers. The hall seemed to shrink around them. Aelin's breath hissed between her teeth, but Rohan's hand stilled her. And if I refuse? The envoy's eyes gleamed. Then Frosthaven bleeds alone. Your council already listens to us. Eris courts our coin. Dareth dreams of our ships. Refuse, and you will find your own lords seated at my table. Rohan leaned closer, his voice low, dangerous. You think me so desperate I would sell my people to foreign chains? Frosthaven bends the knee to no one. The envoy's smile did not falter. Chains? No, lord. Opportunity. Your people starve, your walls crack, your allies vanish. The shard in your breast may make men fear you, but fear builds no kingdom. Marriage does. The firelight caught on the envoy's scar, turning it into a line of flame. Rohan rose. Your dominion seeks to claim Frosthaven, not save it. Tell your masters this. If they wish our loyalty, they will find only steel. The envoy's expression finally darkened. His guards shifted, hands on their blades. For a heartbeat, the inn held its breath. Then the envoy raised his cup, laughing softly. So be it. But know this, Lord Rohan. A throne stands only as long as others choose not to topple it. The Dominion has many hands, many daggers. Choose carefully whom you trust. Rohan turned away, his cloak sweeping the floor. Yet as he stepped into the snow-choked street, he knew the envoy's words were no empty threat. Already, daggers were turning within Frosthaven, daggers carried by those he once called allies. Snow blew across the ramparts of Frosthaven like powdered steel. Rohan moved silently, his boots crunching against ice, his cloak wrapped tight. Aelin followed, eyes scanning shadows. The envoy's words lingered, poisonous. A throne stands only as long as others choose not to topple it. Gildred stayed at the gate, watching the streets, but Rohan's mind was elsewhere. He had survived beasts, curses, and treachery from beyond the north, but the threat now came from within. The council, the lords who bowed before him, the very men who swore oaths, they were no longer his allies. They were players in a game he did not yet see fully. Inside the keep, the great hall was quiet. Firelight flickered against banners of frost and steel, but the warmth could not reach the chill in Rohan's heart. He approached the council chamber, moving past lords and advisors who whispered behind gloved hands. They no longer greeted him with pride in their eyes, only calculation. Rohan, Aelin murmured, listen. I've heard the rumors. Lords Dareth and Eris, they met with the envoy yesterday, before you returned. Rohan's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. Met him? Did they speak for Frosthaven, or for themselves? Aelin's jaw tightened. For themselves. And they weren't subtle. If you do not act soon, your banner will be a carcass before Kaelor strikes again. The council chamber doors were carved from black oak, etched with runes of protection, but they could not keep the treachery out. Rohan opened them, and all eyes turned toward him. The room was tense, as if the air itself awaited the strike of a blade. Lords, ladies, Rohan began, his voice low, deliberate, I have returned from the frontier. I bring word of raiders routed, lives saved, and victories earned. Murmurs ran through the room. Yet their eyes, Dareth's narrow, Eris's calculating, betrayed a different hunger. Rohan's gaze swept the chamber. But I also bring a warning. The Dominion tests us. Their envoy offers gold, ships, and marriage, promising protection. And some among you, I hear, have already heard his words as if they were gospel. A shock passed through the council. Aelin's hand rested lightly on his arm, a reminder of the steel beneath the frost. I will ask again, Rohan continued, voice rising. Do you stand with Frosthaven, or with strangers who would see our walls fall and our people kneel? Silence. Then Lord Dareth rose, his chair scraping across the stone floor. You presume to lecture us, Rohan? We act to protect our lands. If the Dominion offers the means to shield our people, are we fools to refuse? Rohan's eyes narrowed. Shield? Or enslave? You speak of protection while courting chains. Know this. Any man or woman who swears to the envoy over Frosthaven shall answer for it in steel. Lady Erissa's lips curled. Threats from the Iceborn? Her voice was silk wrapped around a dagger. Do you forget how fragile your hold is, Lord? One misstep. One shattered trust, and Frosthaven will crumble, whether I desire it or not. Rohan's pulse thundered in his ears. He could see now the threads of the Dominion's reach. Not only outside the city walls, but woven into the very council he had called his own. I do not forget, he said slowly, the room shrinking around him. I do not forgive, and I do not yield. Aelin's silver eyes met his. You must strike first, they said. The council shifted uncomfortably, whispers curling like smoke. And then, from the far corner, a shadow moved. Not a lord, not an advisor, but a figure draped in black, unseen until now. Kaelor's laughter, faint and cold, brushed the edges of Rohan's mind. The pieces are in place. The board is yours to play, or to lose. Rohan clenched his fists, feeling the dark pulse of the crystal at his side. The threat from within was immediate, more dangerous than any beast or sorcerer he had faced before. And somewhere in the silence of Frosthaven, a dagger gleamed. Not in the hands of an enemy from afar, but in the hand of someone he had called kin. Night had fallen over Frosthaven, thick and suffocating, but the streets remained alive with whispers. Rohan moved through shadowed corridors of the keep, Aelin close, both cloaked in black. Torches burned low, casting jagged shapes across the stone walls, but no fire could warm the chill crawling up his spine. He stopped at the gallery that overlooked the council chambers, where he had confronted Dareth and Eris. Below, the lords whispered, heads bowed, voices careful. The envoy from the Dominion had not left, they lingered, like vultures circling over prey. And Rohan knew instinctively that not every whisper came from fear. Some came from ambition. Aelin stepped beside him, her eyes scanning the hall. "We cannot strike blindly," she murmured. "You need proof, Rohan. Names. Faces. Signs of allegiance." Rohan's hand grazed the hilt of his sword, and the crystal at his side pulsed faintly. It was a reminder that Kaelor's shadow reached everywhere, even here, inside the keep. "I will find them," he said. "And when I do, they will kneel to no one, not the Dominion, not the Council, and not even the Iceborn." The first move was subtle. He summoned his most trusted soldiers, those who had endured the frost, the raiders, and the curse, and instructed them to follow discreetly. Each was sworn to secrecy, each understood the weight of the task. "Watch the lords," he said. "Watch the servants. Listen to words not spoken aloud. Watch the shadows behind the smiles." By dawn, the first threat appeared. A steward, one of Dareth's own men, was observed carrying a sealed letter to the envoy's quarters under cover of night. Rohan intercepted it. The seal bore the sigil of the Dominion, twisted into a mark of dominion over Frosthaven. He opened it carefully, scanning the contents. Gold promises, military aid, marriage alliances. But more dangerous than any treasure or army were the instructions. "We await the signal. The council must move first." Rohan's jaw tightened. It was worse than he feared. The Dominion had infiltrated the council, and its agents were ready to act. Worse still, they would act without hesitation when the order came. He and Aelin convened in the keep's library, surrounded by tomes of law, warfare, and forbidden knowledge. Here, amidst ancient scrolls and dust, they plotted their next steps. "The council cannot know we have this," Rohan said, pointing to the letter. "If Dareth or Eris suspects, the web will tighten, and we will be trapped before the Dominion moves." Aelin's hand brushed the crystal at his side. "It will help," she whispered. "Kaelor may still bind you, but the frost inside you, it can also protect you, if you wield it carefully." Rohan clenched the letter, the frost in his chest thrumming in response. The power that once saved lives on the battlefield now became a tool for espionage, for intimidation, for survival. Each beat of the crystal reminded him that Kaelor's gaze followed him, patient and cruel. They devised a plan. Discreet confrontations, small tests to reveal loyalties. A dinner invitation, a staged council disagreement, and a network of spies within the servants' quarters. Every interaction was an opportunity to uncover who moved for Frosthaven and who for the Dominion. And yet, as night deepened, a sense of unease settled. Someone had noticed their movements, a shadow at the corner of the gallery, a quiet cough in the hall, a servant whose eyes lingered too long. Kaelor's laughter echoed faintly in Rohan's mind, a promise of inevitability. "Every pawn you move feeds me, Iceborn. Every truth you uncover brings you closer to my design." Rohan inhaled sharply, forcing the chill back into the stone walls. The Iceborn could not falter, not now, not when the survival of Frosthaven depended on every decision. But in the silence, he realized the truth he had long ignored. The greatest threat was not the Dominion outside, nor the raiders beyond the gates. It was the council, and the shadows they nurtured within the keep itself. And somewhere in the corridors of Frosthaven, a dagger gleamed, waiting for the wrong moment. Rohan moved like a shadow through the labyrinthine halls of Frosthaven, the weight of the black crystal a constant reminder of Kaelor's unseen hand. Every step carried the burden of suspicion, every glance demanded caution. Even the familiar corridors seemed alien now, warped by whispers and secrets. The council's traitors lurked somewhere among the lords and ladies, their faces hidden behind false smiles. Aelin walked beside him, silent but alert. Her eyes scanned every archway, every flicker of torchlight. "Do you feel it?" she asked, voice low, almost a whisper. "The walls themselves are listening." I feel it, Rohan replied, voice strained. Every shadow a threat, every smile a mask. And Kaelor, he watches. He waits for me to falter. The first test came at breakfast, in the high hall. The lords gathered, their voices polite but stiff. Rohan's gaze swept the room, noting subtle cues. A hand brushing against a hidden dagger. Eyes darting too quickly, a cough that did not match the conversation. Lord Dareth, Rohan said, standing tall, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. Have you received word from the Dominion recently? Dareth blinked, then smiled too quickly. I have heard nothing unusual, my lord. Just routine correspondence, nothing that concerns Frosthaven. Rohan's eyes narrowed. The hesitation was slight, almost imperceptible, but the crystal pulsed in response, a faint, icy heartbeat that betrayed the hidden truth. He made a mental note. Dareth would be watched. After breakfast, Rohan and Aelin slipped to the servants' quarters. Here, the whispers were louder, the loyalties less veiled. A series of tests were set. Small gifts delivered with intentional errors, messages written in invisible ink, conversations baited with hints of false intelligence. One servant, a young boy named Merrick, took the bait. When pressed about the Dominion, he hesitated, then muttered, They are patient. They wait for the council to act first. Rohan's jaw tightened. Every word confirmed the worst fears. The Dominion's network was embedded, moving like a shadow across Frosthaven. And somewhere, Kaelor's laughter threaded through the frost in Rohan's veins, cold and mocking. Patience will be their undoing, Aelin said, voice firm. But we must strike carefully. One misstep, and the council's traitors will slip away, and Kaelor will claim more than your soul. Rohan nodded. He drew his sword, feeling the warmth of the crystal against his palm. For the first time, the frost within him seemed like a weapon of insight rather than destruction. It whispered hints, warned of dangers, guided him through the treachery surrounding them. By nightfall, the first trap was set. A council meeting staged in the northern wing, with only the lords and the envoy present. Hidden behind tapestries, Rohan's men waited, ready to catch any treachery in action. Aelin and Rohan observed from a shadowed balcony above. Minutes stretched into tense silence. Then, subtle movements betrayed the traitors. Dareth's hand brushed a dagger toward his belt. Eris leaned in, murmuring instructions to the Dominion envoy. Rohan's pulse surged. The crystal throbbed as frost curled around his sword, ready to strike. Yet he did not move. Not yet. The trap required patience. One wrong move and the web would collapse, and Kaelor would smile as chaos consumed Frosthaven. The envoy rose, leaving a sealed document on the table. A signal, Rohan realized, for the council to begin their betrayal. He signaled his men. In a single, fluid motion, the hidden soldiers emerged, blocking all exits. A gasp echoed through the hall. The council's traitors froze, their carefully constructed masks falling away. Rohan stepped into the light, the frost curling along the edges of his cloak. The web is revealed, he said, voice low and commanding. And no shadow can hide from the Iceborn. Kaelor's whisper threaded through the crystal, cold and amused. You see, Wolf, every truth you uncover binds you closer to me. Enjoy the moment, it will not last. Rohan clenched the crystal, feeling the frost pulse against his chest. The trap had succeeded, but he knew the war was far from over. The Dominion still lurked in the shadows. Kaelor's hand reached deeper than Frosthaven could comprehend, and the council's betrayal was only the beginning. And somewhere, beyond the walls, a storm was gathering. The northern wing of Frosthaven was silent, save for the occasional clink of chains and the low murmur of anxious lords. Rohan had ordered the council's traitors bound and held under watch, yet the air was thick with tension, as though the stone walls themselves held their breath. Aelin stood beside him, eyes narrowing as she studied the imprisoned lords and ladies. They think chains will silence them, she whispered, voice a razor's edge of warning. But words can be sharper than blades. Rohan's gaze swept over the captives. Dareth, Eris, and the Dominion envoy, faces pale but defiant, sat chained to heavy pillars. Their hands trembled, but not with fear. It was the kind of restrained rage that promised retaliation. I will hear their truth, Rohan said quietly. Every secret, every hidden pact. And then, the Iceborn will decide what justice means. The first to speak was Dareth. His voice, though steady, carried the tremor of dread. You overreach, Rohan. Frosthaven is not yours to command. The council governs, the council protects. Rohan cut him off. Protects whom? The people, or your own ambitions? You have allowed Kaelor's hand into this keep. You have turned Frosthaven into a cage for its own lord. Eris laughed, bitter and sharp. And you think yourself free of chains? You wield that cursed crystal as if it were a weapon, yet it binds you tighter than any rope. Iceborn, or puppet? The words struck like ice shards. Rohan's knuckles whitened around the hilt of his sword. The crystal pulsed faintly, responding to the anger, feeding the frost that curled along his arms. He shook his head. I am no puppet. And yet, I must be cunning. Kaelor will delight in any rash move. He leaned closer to the captives. Speak now. Tell me of the Dominion's plans. Tell me who among you sold secrets, who whispered to Kaelor while my men bled at the frontier. The envoy, silent until now, finally stepped forward, shoulders rigid with pride. You cannot hope to contain what you do not understand, Iceborn. Kaelor is not merely a sorcerer, he is the storm. And storms cannot be chained. Rohan's eyes narrowed. The crystal pulsed with a sharper rhythm, as if it sensed the truth in the envoy's words. He knew then that even these walls would not hold forever. The threat was larger than the traitors before him. Yet he could not allow fear to dictate his actions. He turned to Aelin. Prepare the hall. I will pass judgment. Aelin's expression tightened. Judgment? Or vengeance? Rohan's lips pressed together. Justice. The people must see that Frosthaven stands united against treachery. But Kaelor will see that I am not yet broken. By evening, the great hall was arranged for trial. Citizens, soldiers, and loyal counselors gathered in hushed anticipation. Torches flickered against stone, casting shadows that danced across the faces of the traitors. Rohan ascended the dais, the black crystal warm against his chest, its pulse echoing the rhythm of his resolve. Citizens of Frosthaven, he began, voice strong, carrying across the hall. These men and women betrayed your trust. They invited Kaelor's shadow into our home. They would see Frosthaven kneel before sorcery and ambition. Dareth spat, Eris sneered, and the envoy raised a hand in defiance, but the frost along Rohan's cloak seemed to hum in quiet warning. Every eye was on him. Every breath waited. Yet justice is not vengeance, Rohan continued, voice low but firm. They shall be judged not by anger but by truth. By their deeds, and by what they tried to hide from the people of Frosthaven. Aelin stepped to his side, drawing a deep breath. And Kaelor? She whispered, almost to herself. Rohan's gaze hardened. Kaelor will watch, and he will learn that even shadows cannot claim what the Iceborn defends. As the first words of testimony were called, a subtle tremor ran through the hall. Outside, snow began to fall heavier, carrying the distant echo of Kaelor's laughter. The sorcerer's influence stretched even here, whispering through the walls, threading doubt into the hearts of men. Rohan tightened his grip on the crystal. Frost spread along the dais, but his voice did not falter. Every lie, every concealment, every whispered betrayal would be revealed tonight. And Kaelor would know that the wolf still bled frost, but had not yet been caged. The hall fell into tense silence, awaiting the first revelation. Outside, the storm grew louder. The hall was heavy with expectation. Torches cast long, quivering shadows across the stone walls, and the murmurs of citizens and soldiers alike formed a tense undercurrent. Rohan stood on the dais, the black crystal pulsing faintly against his chest. Its rhythm seemed almost alive, syncing with the rising tension, as if it too anticipated the coming revelations. The first to testify was a scribe, pale and trembling. I saw messages sent in secret, my lord. Letters from the Dominion envoy to Kaelor himself. Promises of gold, of lands, and of influence, in exchange for betrayal. The hall erupted in gasps. Dareth's jaw tightened, and Eris's face twisted in rage. The envoy, however, remained unnervingly calm, lips pressed into a thin line. He raised a hand slowly, as though conducting an orchestra. You think letters prove loyalty broken? I sent words to survive. Words are not deeds. Rohan's gaze sharpened. Survival by treachery is no excuse. You risked Frosthaven for your own gain. And Kaelor would have feasted on your cowardice. Do you deny this? The envoy's eyes flickered to the crystal, and a faint ripple of frost traced the edges of his cloak. I deny nothing. But you, Iceborn, you wield power you do not yet understand. The frost you call your own is a tether, not a gift. Every act you take feeds him. A ripple of unease passed through the hall. Even the soldiers who had fought beside Rohan flinched at the cold undertone of the words. The crystal's pulse quickened, sharp and insistent, and Rohan felt it thrumming against his chest, demanding attention, demanding control. Aelin stepped forward, her voice firm. Then let us judge by truth, not fear. Each betrayal, each concealment, shall be weighed. The people of Frosthaven will see the cost of treachery. And Kaelor shall see that we are not cowed by whispers in the shadows. The scribe continued, recounting hidden meetings, secret shipments of weapons, and clandestine gatherings with the Dominion envoy. Names were named, dates revealed, and the evidence mounted like the winter snow outside. Rohan's eyes swept the hall, noting the shifts in expression, the tremors of doubt that began to take hold. Then came the testimony that silenced everyone. A young guard stepped forward, pale but resolute. I followed Eris one night. She met Kaelor's agent in the western garden. I saw them exchange a dagger, etched with runes of binding. They spoke of controlling Iceborn, of bending his will. Eris's gasp was audible. She shook her head violently. Lies. You lie to save yourself. Rohan raised his hand. Frost curled along the dais, subtle but inexorable. The hall's temperature dropped, the torch flames flickering as though threatened by some invisible wind. You lie to save your pride. The dagger was real. The meeting occurred, and the wolf shall not be caged by such schemes. The envoy's calm cracked. Do you understand what you face, Iceborn? Kaelor does not act alone. The Dominion, the Council, every faction that fears your name, they conspire. Even now, others move against you. Even as you sit here, your allies may falter. Rohan felt the crystal pulse with sudden intensity, as though it understood the threat better than he did. His fingers gripped the hilt of his sword. Frost crept along the edges of the dais, forming delicate spikes that caught the torchlight. The crowd murmured in awe and fear. I have seen enough, Rohan said, voice rising, echoing off the stone. The lies, the treachery, the conspiracies, all are laid bare. Kaelor may weave shadows, but here, in Frosthaven, truth is a blade that cuts clean. The hall fell silent, the weight of anticipation pressing down on every soul. Rohan's eyes locked with the envoy's. The frost traced along the man's cloak, and the black crystal throbbed like a heartbeat in Rohan's chest. Aelin placed a hand on Rohan's arm. And Kaelor? She whispered. Rohan's jaw tightened. Kaelor watches, but tonight he learns that even shadows have limits. The Iceborn does not bend. The Iceborn does not break. From outside the hall came a sudden, violent crack, a sound of splintering wood, of stone rent in two. The citizens screamed. Soldiers drew their blades. The traitors' chains rattled. Kaelor had arrived. The hall froze. Frost shimmered along the edges of the doors. A whisper, carried on the wind, echoed in Rohan's mind. The wolf thinks itself free, but the storm is not yet spent. The doors to the hall splintered with a thunderous crash, sending shards of wood skittering across the stone floor. Frost leapt from the edges, tracing the lines of the broken doorway like jagged veins of ice. Gasps echoed through the chamber as the figure stepped inside, tall, cloaked in shadows that seemed to writhe, eyes burning with a cruel, unnatural light. Kaelor had come. The black crystal at Rohan's chest pulsed violently, thrumming in warning and anticipation. He could feel the sorcerer's presence, a weight pressing against his mind, tugging at his thoughts, whispering promises of ruin and chaos. Every soldier in the hall froze, their fear mirrored in their wide, uncertain eyes. The Dominion envoy shrank back, realizing too late that his schemes had drawn the attention of forces far beyond his control. Kaelor's voice echoed, smooth and deadly. So, the wolf stands before me, wrapped in his mortal cage. I have watched from the shadows as men whispered your name in awe and terror alike. And now I see why. Rohan tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, frost crawling along the edge, crawling up his gauntlets. Your shadows do not frighten me, Kaelor. The Iceborn bends for no one. Not you. Not your Dominion. Not the whispers of cowards. A thin smile traced Kaelor's lips. Ah, the Iceborn, so proud, so certain. But even pride has cracks, and even certainty can be shattered. He raised his hands, fingers etched with glowing runes. Shadows spilled across the hall, curling like smoke and freezing the air in icy tendrils. The crystal flared against Rohan's chest, a heartbeat turned into a storm. Aelin moved close, her hand brushing his arm. Be careful, Rohan. His power is not just in his hands, it is in the fear he plants. Rohan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and fury intertwine. Then let him see fear in my eyes, and yet failed to claim my will. With a flick of Kalor's wrist, a wave of shadow surged forward, slamming into the assembled soldiers. Frost and darkness coiled together, ensnaring men and women alike. Shouts of terror filled the hall as bodies were pinned against walls, frozen where they stood. The envoy screamed, realizing the price of betrayal as Kalor's power brushed against him. Rohan planted his feet, letting the black crystal draw upon the frost within him. The chill spread, countering the shadows, forming a barrier of ice that crackled with raw energy. His voice carried, booming over the chaos. You will not touch them. Kalor's laughter was a blade in the mind. Brave words, Wolf, but do you understand what you wield? Every strike, every act of defiance feeds me, and now, the chain tightens. Rohan gritted his teeth. The frost and shadow collided, creating a storm of dark, glimmering ice. Soldiers rallied behind him, fighting both the physical and magical assault. Aelin's dagger flashed, carving runes of protection in the air, shielding the innocent from Kalor's most deadly tendrils. Yet the crystal's pulse was relentless. Rohan felt it searing into his chest, drawing from his will, feeding his strength even as it demanded submission. Every heartbeat was a battle, every breath a contest of mastery over the tethered power. Kalor advanced, eyes narrowing. You think to stand against me? The wolf is but prey, and I am the winter that never ends. Rohan's sword swung, slicing through shadow and frost alike. Dark ice erupted, scattering Kalor's tendrils, buying moments, precious moments. Then I will fight, sorcerer. I will fight until the last breath, and even if I fall, Frosthaven will stand. The hall shook as the first clash of pure will met pure will. Kalor's voice rang in Rohan's mind, a sinister harmony to the crystal's pulse. The wolf is mine, and yet, it resists. How delicious. Outside the hall, citizens pressed against windows, watching the dance of ice and shadow, hearing the clash of power that would shape the fate of Frosthaven. Inside, the battle escalated, a storm of magic and steel, courage and betrayal, fear and defiance. And in the center, the Iceborn stood, frost blazing, crystal thundering, eyes locked on the sorcerer who sought to unmake him. One step, one swing, one heartbeat at a time, the fate of the kingdom and of his own soul teetered on the edge of a knife. Then, with a sudden, blinding flash of cold light, Kalor's shadowed form recoiled, a howl of rage shattering the chamber. Rohan staggered, the crystal dimming slightly, but the surge of frost remained under his control. Kalor's words echoed as he withdrew. This is not over, wolf. The storm follows you, always. The hall was silent but for the crackle of ice. Soldiers and citizens alike stared, breaths frozen, hearts pounding. Rohan lowered his sword, sweat mingling with frost, realizing the true cost of standing against a sorcerer who had no loyalty but to chaos itself. Frosthaven had survived the night. But the war for the Iceborn's soul, and the kingdom, was only beginning. And in the silence, he realized this was no longer a battle only against Kalor. Frosthaven's future might be decided not by war, but by a marriage sealed in treachery.